So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about what you can actually do as soon as you leave this theater, or even now, to get you on the right track. And so we're going to try and do this whirlwind tour of prevention in about 10 minutes. So on each of these slides, I could probably spend a good 20-30 minutes talking about it. So excuse me if I end up being brief, but I want to cover a few things so you have some take-home tips. Okay, so the first thing is, what do I actually do to lead a heart-healthy lifestyle? And both Dr. Andy and Dr. Francis have talked about a few things. And I think sometimes people think it can be very, very confusing. And so one of the pictures I have up there actually are my kids thinking, what do we do, right? What am I supposed to eat? How much am I supposed to exercise? People think when they come see a dietitian, it's all about eating salad and carrot sticks. And it's not about that. And with exercise, people think, I do not want to spend the rest of my life in a gym, plugged to a machine, and looking like a drone. And again, it does not have to be about that. So hopefully we can erase all those pretexts of what a heart-healthy lifestyle is about. It has to work. So again, this is the only technical slide I have. This is a major trial that was done, or a study that was done, Interheart, done by researchers out of McMaster, showing that basically 90% of myocardial infarctions, MIs, can be prevented from lifestyle factors. So the 9 risk factors that account for 90% of MIs: smoking, fruit and vegetable intake, not enough fruit and vegetable intake, that is, not enough exercise, too much alcohol, high blood pressure, that's hypertension, DEM is diabetes mellitus, abdominal obesity, stress, lipids, are all things that we can actually work on. So the excuse of it's in my genetics, my parents have it, it's all their fault, it doesn't wash. Each of us have a role in how we can change our future. And so especially those with grandchildren out there, with children, which is a lot of us, we are the role models to how our future is going to happen. And that starts with each and every day, the choices that you're making with your lifestyle. And so let's talk about what is the recipe for success. So the first step is being prepared, and then of course what you're actually eating. And again, we're going to talk about a few things that can help get you on the right track. And I'm sure many of you are already doing many of these things. And of course, with the diet also comes the exercise. We'll talk a little bit about what the FIT principle is and SMART. So I'm big into acronyms. So if you think the letter F and S, then you'll remember probably the whole part of my presentation. So when we talk about exercise, you think, I don't have time, and who wants to go for a walk in weather like this? Well, I guess one way to put it is, what fits your busy schedule better, exercising 30 minutes a day or being dead 24 hours a day? If you put it like that, well, hey, 30 minutes isn't so bad. And there's actually a great YouTube video out there that talks exactly about the 30 minutes of exercise. It's easy, you just got to do it. It's a process. It doesn't mean tomorrow you're going to be making these changes, but it all starts with thinking about it. So what do you need to do? When you think about your eating environment, which Dr. Andy had talked about, or just environment, you need to think about, well, where am I eating? Am I most of my meals in the car? What kind of dishes am I using? A lot of dishes and cutlery these days are huge, and the bigger the portions, the bigger the serving dishes, the more you're going to eat. So just by changing things like that, you don't even have to change how much you're eating. The environment can play to your advantage. A famous researcher, Brian Westink, has written the book Mindless Eating. That's a great resource for people that want to learn more about that. And this picture shows really poignantly how your portion size has changed just by the serving sizes that you're using. I think most of us, regardless of age, would have the biggest plate. I know if I have a big plate, I just fill it up. So when you think of the F words, right, think of it as the things you want to include. So fish, healthy fats, and fiber. We're not going to go into a lot of detail, but think of those are some of those key words. So fatty fish, so an acronym I like to use, SMASH, those are where you get your heart-healthy omega-3 fats. So salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, even oysters are high omega-3s. Those are basically like, I guess, an oil cleaner that keeps your blood flowing more smoothly so things don't stick. It's like rust-proofing your arteries. So those are the things you want to include more of, at least twice a week. People that eat fish at least twice a week, have omega-3s in their diets, their incidence of heart disease is actually 36% lower. It's one of the most powerful heart-healthy foods you can include. Plant sources of omega-3s are your flax and canola, but they're much less potent than the sources from fish. And some of you actually may be taking omega-3 fish oil supplements to help give you that boost. So in other terms of other healthy fats, this is what you want to have instead of those bad saturated fats, which we'll touch on briefly. So your olive oil, canola oils, nuts, avocados. The big thing though with these kinds of healthy fats is the portion that you're eating. I had a cardiac rehab patient that heard the message about eating nuts, and he came back a week later and said, you know, Bill, what happened? Your weight's gone up 3 or 4 pounds. He's like, well, you told me nuts are really good. I went to Costco and bought almonds. I've been eating them every day. Well, they're healthy, but remember, too much of any one good thing is not a good thing. So 1/4 of a cup would be the portion that you kind of want to look at. Fiber. I can't talk enough about this. Another F word. So again, most of us don't eat enough. The average intake is 11 to 17 grams. We actually want to look for more like 20 to 30. And this is where reading the label is really important. And the soluble fiber, S for sticky, helps glom onto that bad LDL, lousy cholesterol, and pull it out of your body. And that can actually help with up to 10% cholesterol lowering with fiber intake. So again, more foods to include. And again, the soluble fiber would be like your beans, lentils, apples, that pectin, the gummy stuff, the Metamucil, that's the kind of stuff that's high in the soluble fiber. So with the foods that you eat less of, the S words. So we're only going to talk about saturated fat and salt because of time, but there's also sugar, there's supersizing foods. Those are all the things you want to stay away from or eat much less of. So saturated fat, the magic number is under 20 grams of saturated fat. That's not total fat. So again, for those of you that are reading labels, if a food has 5 grams of saturated fat and you're having 2 servings of it, that's 10 grams of saturated fat. That's half your intake. Now, where do you get saturated fat from? It's mainly from your fast foods, right? Stuff that I know none of you are eating. Fatty meats, the skin on chicken, those kinds of things. Dairy products, the full fat cheeses, whole milk. That's the saturated fat that directly impacts that LDL cholesterol. And we've actually seen that in prevention clinic where patients are coming in loving the full fat. I call them creamies. There's some people that really like the creamy mouthfeel of the fat, the ranch dressings. And with those kinds of sort of taste palettes, when we see a difference in making dietary changes, we actually can see really big differences in their cholesterol. So especially when there's a difference in the saturated fat intake. And of course, salt. Again, a whole other topic we could spend a lot of time on. What people don't really realize is that they say to me, Melody, I've stopped using the salt shaker. I said, well, that's great, but that's not where you're getting most of the salt from. More than 70%, 77% of our sodium intake comes from processed foods that are hidden. I did a couple of global segments about sodium, and I was doing my research, and I went to a coffee shop and I looked up their scone, and their scone was 900 milligrams of sodium. Who would think a scone would have that much sodium? Even muffins, commercial muffins, can have 500 or 600 milligrams of sodium. And I know you're a well-educated audience. You're going to know that 1,500 milligrams is the amount that we're looking for. So just reading labels and being aware is that first step. And this, with sodium, we actually can make some very simple changes to make a difference in our dietary intake. Here, there's a great website, sodium101.ca, that has some excellent resources. So again, we talked about this, 1,500 milligrams to to even lower, 1,300, depending on your age. So again, the only way you're going to be able to tell is reading the label. So these are just some couple examples of products that actually have lower sodium, and there's a lot more. Each time I'm at the grocery store, I'm seeing more and more products. The key thing is spending a little bit of extra time reading the labels to find out. I was actually surprised to find out Frosted Mini Wheats is one of the few cereals that has 0 milligrams of sodium. A much better choice than Raisin Bran or Corn Flakes, and who would have thought? So just read those labels. When we talk about exercise, which goes hand in hand with the diet, sometimes people think, well, I'll just forget the diet and I'll just work on exercise. But it has to go hand in hand together. And any medications that you may be on in terms for cholesterol lowering work better when you're following a heart-healthy diet and getting active. So it's the FIT principle. So this is another F word, acronym. Frequency, intensity, time, and type. This is to help guide to find out how much you're actually exercising, because it's not something to say, you know what, I exercise, I just go for a walk every week. No, it's about the frequency, it's about all the FIT principle. So exercise needs to be done most days, it needs to be done to a moderate intent. And what does moderate mean? That's such an ambiguous word. So think of it as a sing, walk, gasp test. If you're singing a song as you're doing your daily walk, not good enough. You got to pump it up. You should be able to talk, but you shouldn't be gasping. So that's a good test to make sure you're at the right intensity. The time, at least 30 minutes. And for sustained weight loss, ideally it should be more like 60 minutes. So type, it's got to be something you enjoy. If you cannot stand getting on that treadmill, well, don't do it. Find something that you like. Join the whole dancing movement. And then in terms of pedometers, this is something I really like doing, and I definitely notice when I don't wear my pedometer, I am oblivious to what kind of activity I'm doing, especially now in a more of an administrative role. I tend to find I'm sitting a lot more. So a pedometer, what you do is you wear it on your hip, and it just measures how many steps that you're doing. And studies have shown when you keep a log of what you're actually eating and how many steps you're doing, you actually end up taking about 30% more steps than if you weren't recording it. It's sort of that confessional. You have to wear it daily. It does make a difference. So the optimal for health is 10,000 steps. And for actual, when they've looked at people that have lost weight and kept it off, it's actually over 12,000 steps a day for sustained weight loss. And you think, well, what does that mean? And we'll talk about that. So in terms of a mile of walking is about 2,000 to 2,500 steps. So 10,000 steps for optimal health is about 4 or 5 miles. So if you take an example, one city block's about 200 steps. And then most people walk 1,200 steps in about 10 minutes. The average person walks 3,000 steps. That's crazy. And if you wear a pedometer, you actually will be quite surprised at how little people are walking. Because people again say to me, but Melody, I'm really active. I walk all the time. My job is just so busy. I go, strap on a pedometer. Let's see how much you're actually walking. And then they come back, oh, I'm only walking 4,000 or 5,000. So it's all that perspective of what people are thinking is, well, what am I doing for activity? So then, when you think about exercise versus calories, a mile of walking really only burns off 100 calories. So for example, that yogurt I just ate this morning had 100 calories. So if you add any extra calories that you're having that you don't really care about, it's a lot of work with the exercise. So by just exercising to sort of burn off calories, it's not as efficient. So I trained for a marathon, and I thought I would lose so much weight. Well, I ended up gaining weight because it was the whole thing of, well, I just ran 10 miles. I want to have a cinnamon bun and a large latte, and I'm just going to take a nap for the rest of the afternoon. So I think there's a bit of that misconception of the exercise entitlement factor. Just because you're exercising doesn't mean it gives you sort of license to eat extra food. Otherwise, that defeats the whole purpose. Exercise should be considered sort of part of the whole lifestyle of getting healthy and getting your heart stronger. So a pedometer is one of the great tools to get you there. And in terms of setting those goals, which is easy to talk about what to do, but how are you going to do it? Talking about behavior change is being smart. So this is your S acronym. So you have to be specific with your goal. So if it's about, I'm going to eat more fruits and veggies, well, it's not just, I'm going to eat more fruits and veggies. Well, how many times a day? How many times a week? What are you going to eat? When are you going to do it? And if you have someone sign off or have a discussion with your friend, your spouse, your dog even, then that makes you more accountable. So setting those goals are also very important, because time and time again I hear, well, I just want to lose some weight so I don't have to go on cholesterol lowering pills. Well, it's not about that. It's about, well, how are you going to do that? And then you break it down. And with the prevention clinic, we have great clinicians that work with the person individually to set up those goals so that we can get you on the right path.